I only have 2 regrets in life. Watching White Lotus with my mom, and the cavalier way in which I taught myself guitar. So today we're talking about the 5 beginner mistakes that I made that I'm gonna help people try to avoid, okay? So we got a couple different schools of thought in how I'm gonna approach this. I just wanna get the quickest one out of the way first, okay? And this is bending on a guitar. Let's talk about bending maybe like the 7th fret on the G string, which is a D note, into like an E note. Bending from 7 to 9. Something like that, right? When I first started playing, I would probably bend it like this. I take like my pointer finger, which was my strongest finger at the time, and I would pull down on it. And it would be a total mess. If I was contextually coming from up here, I would maybe use my ring finger, but then I would do this. I wouldn't even have like my thumb on the back. It would just be like my ring finger floating in space and just yanking on the string, okay? Stop doing that, please. What took me way too long to understand was if I want to bend the 7th note to the 9th note, I can use all my fingers to help. Never occurred to me this was a team sport, all right? So my ring finger's on the 7th fret of the G string, my middle finger's on the 6th fret, and my pointer finger's on the 5th fret. Now when they're all on the string together, I can actually use all my fingers as one to bend up or pull down, okay? Even just pulling down, I remember I really instinctually just wanted to pull everything down. When you go up, you have a lot more options because you can actually maybe hit the strings under it. A lot of different things you can do. Get a unison bend if you want. If you're on the B string, you don't have to worry about pulling off the fretboard. You can actually do that. And look at this, pinky. Now I've got all 4 fingers working together to help me out, right? So bending, some of these are gonna be more beginner friendly, but I wanted to start with the bending because it's just a huge pet peeve of mine. I totally screwed that up when I was playing. And now it sounds a lot better. Speaking of sounding better, the reason that the audio on this video sounds way better is because this video is sponsored by Shure microphones and their Nexodyne mics. I have the Nexodyne miking up my guitar cab right now, which is why it actually sounds way better than just using my camera audio. So just like... So I'm gonna talk more about this mic later, but I'm so in love with these and the sound that I'm getting out of the Strat plugged right into my Supro Black Magic Reverb. On to the next tip. And this is gonna be focusing way too much on the first 3 frets and using the forbidden Mel Bay guitar book and the worst term to ever come out of guitar instruction, your freshman 15 chords. Learn 15 chords, guys, that don't have any relation to each other and are all in maybe 3 or 4 different keys, okay? So what I mean by that is you should learn chords and learn open chords, especially if you're playing acoustic guitar or whatever. Open chords are great, but learn them in context with each other because then you can use them in songs. I know, blows your mind. Quick tip. Pretty much any key that you're in is only gonna have 6 main chords. So the fact that like we're lumping 15 together out of context and you're pulling from different keys doesn't make sense. It's a lot of memorization, and also it's kind of like teaching you almost backwards, right? So when I say like the first 3 frets, it's like we all know everybody's dreaded first couple of chords are F major and B minor, right? It's essentially the same shape. It's that E string rooted bar chord shape, right? You bar the first fret, you get your ring finger and your pinky on the 3rd fret, the A string and the D string, your middle finger on the 2nd fret, and you're expected to get tone somehow out of the B and E strings, right? When you're a beginner, there's nothing more frustrating than this, which is like, it is my goal in life to teach people that they don't have to use bar chords because they'll come up across those chords in songs and be like, all right, you know what? I'm gonna quit guitar. I'm gonna go watch White Lotus and see the most disgusting things out of context. I always walk downstairs and my family's watching it if I'm in Florida, and like, I see the most disgusting things. And it's always White Lotus. I'm sure it's a great show if you watch it from beginning to end, but if you just piggyback the worst clips, you'll be scarred forever. Anyways, F major, we don't have to play it as a major bar chord. Use just the middle 4 strings because then it becomes as easy as a C major chord, which you learn from the Mel Bay books, which I love to dunk on. Just drop your pinky on the 3rd fret of the D string, middle finger down a string, and then you've got 3A, 3D, 2G, 1B. There's your F major chord. Just as easy as a C major, and those chords relate to each other. The problem that I have is like, you'll see stuff like the chord progression will be maybe like F major to D minor to G major. And then you're like, oh, which G major do I use? The 3rd fret on the B string with my ring finger, or my pinky, or open, or whatever? Understanding the context of movable shapes is so important when you're first starting out because it gets you familiar with how the actual neck and the fretboard works. So these shapes almost couldn't be more different from each other. So it's wild to me that we start beginners off with the expectation that they have to go from here, like, all right, now get your middle finger here, and then your pointer finger here, and your ring and pinky here, and then now we're gonna go to this bar chord, so bar this, and then like, that's a pretty difficult move to kind of do in time. When, if we just start out with power chords, you can play a song already, right? F major to D minor to G major. Let's just do a power chord version. F major to G to D. Or like I said, F to D minor to G. All we're doing is using the same shape and moving that around. And that is so much more valuable because then you can actually build on that shape and add things to it. Instead of learning the hard way first and then removing things from it to play certain songs. It makes so much more sense to me to take a shape that you can move, even if it is a fuller major shape for F, G, and then if you want to make it minor, you just go down to like that D, the 10th fret would be a D major, but then flatten the 3rd, and then now I just have 10A, or 12A, 12D, and 10G, and now this is my D minor. It makes so much more sense, and I think it's actually easier, even though it looks maybe more impressive, to go from F major to D minor, like this, right? F, D, instead of going F, D. And even though a more seasoned player can make that look kind of more efficient, F major, I think for a beginner, it's actually much more difficult to rearrange all your fingers into a different area than really just going from here to a slightly different shape, right? So, start thinking about either just using power chords to move around and play music, play songs that you like, do cool stuff like that, and then add to the shape instead of starting from a point of weakness and subtracting from the shape, okay? I think that makes a lot of sense. Now, this is somewhat tangentially related because I'm talking about using movable shapes, and that is taking your aversion to music theory, lighting it on fire, and just throwing it in a dumpster, because a little bit of music theory is going to go so long. Perfect example of this. I was a huge Jimi Hendrix fan when I first started playing guitar. Probably the reason that I started playing guitar was Jimi Hendrix. And I would learn a song like Manic Depression, right? Manic Depression has a cool riff. It's got like cool little riffs that outline chords throughout it, but I would be like memorizing it and it would sound and look like this. In my mind, it'd be like, all right, so I've got the riff. And then I'd be like, 5, E4, A7, A3, E2, A5, A5, A6, A7, A, back to the riff, right? And it's like, that's pure memorization. Eventually it did kind of help, but it was like memorizing a incredibly long sequence of tabs that I was either glued to or it took me forever to get off, when, if I knew a little bit of music theory, like for instance that, something like that, that's just outlining an A major chord to a G major chord. So what I mean by that is like instead of going, all right, 5E, 4A, 7A, this is really just from a scale shape. G major, right, or A major right here. It's just the first degree, the third degree, and the fifth degree. If I play them in order, that makes an A major chord. I can do the same thing for a G major chord, and then I can chromatic walk it to a riff. And then once I get to the riff, it's like, okay, this is just an A, it's octave, and then I've got this kind of flat 7, and because it's an A major chord, a flat 7 is going to make a dominant 7 chord, and then I can kind of like get a little more into it. It's like, if I just knew that, if someone was like, bro, Sean, like, Manic Depression is just A to G, and then if you really want to get crazy, E major, G major. Then it's like the next step. It's like such a great song to learn because it's having fun. It's using arpeggios, which again, I'm not saying that Jimmy thought this way, but like using music theory as a base level tool to remember how you're doing things and understand it is going to come and make your playing so much easier. And then when you actually do end up recording yourself, which is kind of like a bonus tip, it's not one of the main ones, but it's a bonus tip, with the new Shure Nexodyne guitar cab mics, you're going to feel the progress of what you're doing so much better, because you know, you're never too early to start recording yourself and listening back to it. So you want to have that be an enjoyable experience and not just like a trash voice memo of like, you know, playing something like that. You want to get that cool. You know, it just sounds good. The thing about these mics is like, I almost feel like they're pre-EQ'd. Like they've done such a good job of this. Last month I did a video where me and my friend Lily were working on this album, and I was using the Nexodyne drum mics, which they have tom mics and a kick too, and then putting this on the snare, and it's like the mix that I was getting just from the mics by themselves was like just pretty much ready to go. So I'm a huge fan. I'm a lifelong fan of the Shure SM57. That's been on every guitar recording I've ever done, and the fact that they have released this new Nexodyne model is to me an upgrade, and it just saves me time because it's going in my DAW pretty much exactly how it sounds to me. I mean, listen to that. Super clean. I love it. This is just Strat going direct into the Super Blackmagic. So shout out to Shure. Thanks for sending the mics over. Affiliate link in the description. Next tip. Don't learn scales, learn songs. Again, this is still tangentially related to the last clip, but a lot of times when you first start, I was like, all right, I got my freshman 15 chords from the Melbe book. I got my E minor pentatonic scale that I'm going to start learning. I'm going to pair that with the A minor pentatonic scale. But it's like, okay, what am I actually doing here? This is a separate practice. I'm maybe doing some songs, right? I'm maybe playing my little song, my little F major, D minor, G major, F major song. All right, I've finished that part of practicing. Now I'm going to move on to the next part of practicing, my 15 minutes of Great Gatsby style scale work, all right? And again, there are exceptions. I'm not saying don't practice your scales. It's a great way to kind of get the muscle memory into your fingers for doing that. But understanding how these scales are going to help you musically is so much more important, right? So even let's stick with some Jimi Hendrix stuff, because if we just take A minor pentatonic, right? 5, 8, 5, 7, 5, 7, 5, 7, 5, 8, 5, 8. You can do a lot with that. We can make that riff. It's really just in the pentatonic. If I were to number these off, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, right? 1, 6, 5, 6, 5. When really in the full minor scale, after you sign up for my Patreon and learn more about music theory, you'll know it's a 1 octave flat 7. But you can make that riff from the minor pentatonic scale, right? And then you can actually go above and beyond that, where maybe I want to start double stopping through a scale, right? So the cool thing about pentatonic scale and why everybody in the guitar world plays the pentatonic scale is because it's super easy to remember. There are 2 touch points per string, and it becomes a shape that your mind can easily recognize and recall, all right? The leftmost point for a right-handed guitar player is just going to be the same fret, 5, and then we've just got 3 frets from the 5th fret, 2 frets, 2 frets, 2 frets, 3 frets, 3 frets, right? So that shape is a beautiful thing. I'm not saying anything bad about minor pentatonic, but using it contextually in a song is way more helpful. So then maybe I can start... I can start double stopping through it, playing some of those notes together, and it sounds so much more musical, but I'm still practicing the scale, but I'm doing it in more of a song way to do it. I can actually incorporate the bending from that other part too. I can go root, double stop, and then get those bends, which is kind of how he plays it, right? So a lot of stuff that might make sense, and you know, if you already do this, great on you. But it was just stuff that I actually kind of struggled with, right? But you don't have to if you haven't. Now, the last tip that I wish I kind of maybe spent a little more time thinking about is probably going to be the most controversial one, and it's about a pick. All right. So when I first started playing, I used a pick. It's very difficult for me because it's hard enough figuring out what my left hand is doing, my fretting hand is doing. Now I also got to get this foreign object to get the right string. And it's like, how do I hold a pick? This is another thing. It'll be a while until you settle on getting the right pick. I actually like the Gator grips because they don't slip. I have these sweaty, oily hands all the time, so all the celluloid ones would slip out of my hands and they'd be moving around. And how much do I choke? It's like, it's too much to think about at first. Use your fingers. I think when you start out using your fingers, it's a little bit easier at first, and you develop a more intimate relationship with your guitar, which is what we all want anyways. Let's not get too intimate with it, otherwise you end up on an episode of White Lotus. But if you use your fingers, you can actually spend a little bit more time on your fretting hand, because I think, hot take, having that relationship with the strings and having your fingers understand where they are and the distances between the strings is very, very important. Plus, if you do want to get like that kind of sound, you can do it with your fingers too, right? Again, it's not exactly the same. Here's a pick. Fingers. Now, if you do the thing where it looks like I'm holding a pick, but I'm really just pinching my fingers together, where the downstrokes are the nail of my pointer finger, the upstrokes are the nail of my thumb, you get pretty much the gist of what's great about a pick. But you also have the added benefit of maybe going back and forth into some fingerstyle activity. So I started out with a pick, then I went fingers, then I reincorporated the pick, then I ditched it again, and it's like eventually I ended up on that kind of being my core style. But now I added the pick, and you can kind of do like a hybrid thing where you get the best of both worlds, where maybe you get like the attack, but you can still use your fingers like that. Like you'll kind of like tuck the pick in here, and then these fingers kind of, again, don't worry about that now. That's kind of a more, intermediate advanced thing. I could do a lesson on that if you guys are interested. Let me know in the comments. But I do think that actually using your fingers, whether it's for fingerstyle or not, and again, I think fingerstyle is something eventually everybody's going to want to try out. So start off with your fingers and add the pick later, because it'll be a lot easier to add something instead of taking it away and then relearning in a different way, right? Just my philosophy. Obviously, there are exceptions to this. If all you want to do is play just like shreddy, tremolo, picking metal type stuff, start out with a pick and then just grind that, and that's your thing. But I think for most people, finding that kind of balance of like, all right, I want to make these chords, I want to move around, I want to kind of understand the fretboard, I want to do that and like have it be a little smoother. Use your fingers to start out with. Get yourself a Shure Nexodine mic, start recording yourself so you can monitor your progress with the most pristine audio quality. Again, you guys wouldn't believe, I went to the Shure headquarters in Chicago last year. They had me out, and they kind of just showed us around the factory. The amount of testing, research, and development that goes into Shure products would actually blow your mind. I would be in these rooms, I had no idea what was going on with the machinery that they were trying to explain to me. Trust me when I say, this is like some pretty crazy tech that they have going on here. So thank you to them for sponsoring the video. Send the mics out. I have an affiliate link in the description. If you guys are interested, consider clicking on that. They really help the channel out. And if you have any questions, hit me up in the comment section or the website, and I'll talk to y'all soon.